Suga Sean weighed in on Fury and Ngannou and their face-off in the ring. And Suga Sean said, man, these guys botched it. This was a waste. They should have at least faked it. What do you guys think of that? Because I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I know exactly what Sean means. I've never seen a reveal done as boring and as vanilla as what those two guys did. However, if I'm to be fair, it worked for me. I had no interest, possibly leading the charge for haters against that contest. Possibly. And I warmed up to it after seeing that. Wherever I was, on a scale of 1 to 10, wherever I was, I like it more now. I understand it. I get it more now. Even though what Sean is saying is completely correct, there was nothing there. There was an announcer that was cued. There was a total of 3 announcers ringside. Only one of them was cued. The other 2 were talking over the one that's trying to deliver the big message for the network. Whoever told the one announcer ahead of time, this is going to happen, sell it, is trying to get his message out with 2 other knuckleheads speaking over the top of him because they weren't smart enough to know who Francis Ngannou was and that this was a foreshadow for something possibly in the future. Like, it was one of those things. I do understand that that was very botched. But think about this from Francis's standpoint, okay? Francis is the B-side. Francis gets to get in the ring in front of 94,000 people. I dreamed of walking out in front of sold-out arenas. I dreamed of walking out in front of 15,000. Maybe I'll get to do 17,000. I got to do 12. My dreams weren't even as big as what Francis's reality was. He's the B-side. This is a great moment. He's nursing. He's rehabbing. He gets his attention. It looks like he's getting something locked in. If this is going to happen, it gets to be me. I mean, this is a great moment for Francis. Francis should not have gotten in there and spoiled or disrespected a glorious moment that he was invited to. Francis really did do everything right. Tyson, in his glorious moment, which we believe to be his last, I mean, he's saying in front of his home crowd, I'm done. 94,000 people. If Tyson would have worked, if he would have manufactured something, in a sense, he would have been being fraudulent to his own fans who came out to see his very last performance. That would have been rude. Maybe it would have been entertaining. Maybe you could have made it work. I'm just sharing from a very practical moment. If that spot was botched, what could have they done different? And we've seen them trying to yell at one another. I mean, these two barely understood each other as it was. Tyson made some reference to a male body part. I didn't know what he was saying, let alone Francis, where English isn't even his first language. I mean, right, it was just one of those things where these two really could have missed each other unless they really worked it out in the back, and that would have been a little bit weird. Like, Tyson had enough things to focus on and worry about in that moment. So as you do look back, generally when you have something like that, you want it to be very organic. It wasn't organic. It was staged. You flew Francis there. Tyson invited him into the ring. So you can't have this organic moment that staged and present it to the audience as both. We're going to see right through it. It's going to look silly. Tyson then went to his post-fight press conference and he said, I want to do this Francis thing. We're going to do it a hybrid. We're going to make our own rule set. And then he said, I'm even going to fight in the WWE. Like, it got to one of these points where if he would have done a straight pro wrestling angle and 20 minutes later mentioned pro wrestling by name of its biggest industry leader of WWE, like, it just would have gotten weird. Instead, they did it very real. Tyson said some very nice things about him. He was being happy. He was in a moment. He's got the fans around. He's got the media around. Francis says a couple of words. I mean, as much as you want to call it a botched spot, it's not what I would have predicted. Like, this was expensive. This was a lot of work. There was a lot of things that went in to have that moment, of which you cannot clip off and play on SportsCenter later. There was nothing about it that told us what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, what was on the line, or why we should care. I do agree with Sean on that. I'm just speaking to a perspective of what could have they done different? What should have they done different? It's a tough one. And for me, it worked. My biggest pushback on this is purely that they're trying to make up their own rules. They're trying to make up a game. I don't understand why you would do that. Francis Ngannou has not said, I'll fight Tyson Fury if. Francis never did that. He said flat out, I will go box Tyson Fury. Not something that Tyson said to Francis, well, I'll come do MMA with you. Like, it wasn't one of those things. So I feel like they're negotiating against themselves, and it's just getting weird. And we, the audience, would like to know what they're doing. I mean, if you're going to call it cricket, call it cricket. If you're going to call it ping pong, call it ping pong. You're going to call it a hybrid button. No, stop right there. You don't get to make up your own rules to the game. That's weird. That's the only thing about this that's weird. The rest of it is very straightforward. This is just an attraction. This has been done before. There was a pro wrestler named Aoki, took on a boxer named Muhammad Ali. And it didn't do very well at the time because people didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand it. Is this going to be fake? Is this going to be a work? One guy's wearing gloves. One guy is like, the whole thing was just weird. Now that has aged very well like a fine wine. If you go look that clip up, it's on YouTube right now. It has done crazy numbers. But in the time and at the moment, it just wasn't that big of a deal because people didn't get it. And they shouldn't have got it. One guy's a boxer wearing boxing gloves. One guy's a wrestler wearing no gloves. It was weird and it was unusual, and they tried to do their own thing. And they overthought it and they went too far, which is why in that exact moment, it wasn't this great attraction that it could have and probably should have been. So as I look at that match, one thing that I have missed, and you can do great analytics. You can get analysis and get people together, do all these different algorithms and work Google into it and check searches, and you could do all these different things to give yourself what's called a projection for a fight. You could do that, or you could just ask me. And you guys have that same ability, right? Us hardcore fit, we know what's going to work. We can test our own level of anticipation. Oh my goodness, yes, I really want to see that. Okay. One miss that I have had in my calculation of telling you don't do this, nobody's going to buy it, you're getting bad advice, Francis. One miscalculation that I have is what a star Tyson is, right? Like, for whatever reason that Tyson has chosen Francis, and Francis has got to be hoping to goodness that Tyson doesn't come off that, because nobody else has offered themselves. Like, Tyson doesn't have another option. If he wants to do a crossover with MMA, if he wants to show his skills and juxtapose that against MMA and adjudicate that in some kind of combat, the only option that stepped forward is Francis. And that's one of the places Francis has to be real careful with this relationship. Because if Jon Jones speaks up, if Jon Jones says, you know what, I'd like to do that, Fury's going to have something to think about. And right now he does not. Right now, Fury's got one. I got this UFC guy, and he happens to be the champion. He's a great big guy, and he said that he wants to box. He's willing to do it, but Tyson hasn't been presented with other options. And on top of that, Tyson isn't the money guy back in this whole thing. It really is very relevant what I'm saying. If somebody else with a bigger name stepped forward that satisfies the criteria of being interesting and being a crossover from the world of MMA, what happens then? Is it still Francis? Maybe. I don't know those guys' relationship. I'm just sharing with you. Boy, you got a lot of faith, right? With big risk comes big reward. Francis is putting everything out there. Good for him. It seems to be going his way. I have miscalculated what a big star Tyson is. And boxing is very different. I watched that card. I watched it out of respect to Tyson Fury. I haven't the foggiest idea who Dylan White is, and I don't mean that in a rude way. If your name's not Anthony Joshua, right, it's one of those things. Anthony Joshua just lost a fight to an Ukrainian gentleman. I watched that match, and I can't produce that guy's name for you, and I'm a boxing fan. It's one of those things. But think of it from a movie perspective, right? I'm not a great actor. But imagine that Will Smith chooses me to be his co-star. I don't have any Grammys. I don't have any nominations. I don't have any body of work that I can show you. I do some stuff on YouTube and move a little window sheen here and there. But Will Smith chose me. I'm going to go into this and defending what my contract's like, and include if I'm on back-end money. This could be one of these life-changing moments where I'm going to go and act, and I'm going to go and do this thing. And it's not because I deserve to be. It's because Will Smith chose me, and he does deserve it. Tyson Fury sold 94,000 tickets live. I watched the co-main event. It was painful to watch. Painful. Oh, God, I was just begging one of you guys, please, corner, stop this fight. Referee, help us just get these guys out of here. It was hard to watch. But I still watched it just so I could get to the Tyson fight. This is the way that boxing is done. So when my mind instantly defaults to what is going to happen and is this going to be competitive, and I come out with a very clear interpretation of, no, of course not. What I fail to see is that that doesn't seem to matter. In the world of boxing, that really does not seem to matter. That is what they are used to. They are used to something different. They aren't promised an entire evening. They aren't promised an entire what we call a main card. They aren't promised and advertised what we call a co-main event or multiple championship matches or an upcoming star or a personal aggression. They just don't get the same thing that we get. It's very different in MMA, which is a miscalculation by me. When I see a guy named Dylan White's warming up in the back. Where I trust this guy's a very good, I'm not looking to be a jerk, but he's warming up in the back. He's jumping rope. This guy was barely getting over the rope. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm sitting there on my TV. This guy's won a whole bunch of fights. Big Dylan White, right? He's clearly overweight, but he's a good puncher, and he's got these things. He was barely jumping this rope, and I'm saying, like, what are we getting ready to watch? This guy can't move. Dylan White is now complaining post-fight that it wasn't the knockout of the uppercut that got him, that he was pushed. And when he was pushed, he fell to the canvas and he hit his head, and therefore he should get a rematch. As a matter of fact, this should be voided. That's illegal. He might be right. Can you not push in boxing? I haven't really seen a lot of guys push. I've never seen anybody push that then fell down and couldn't get up. Like, maybe he's right. Either way, my point of he barely got over the rope. He's clearly overweight. I'm not terribly familiar with him. And he's complaining that he fell down and bonked his head because he was pushed. I mean, in all fairness to me, I can find a lot of guys to fit that criteria. I can't sell 94,000 tickets, but Tyson did. There's something there. Tyson seems to be very locked on this Francis. And I will give the comparison. If Will Smith was to choose me with no experience, who doesn't belong there, as his co-star, I'm going to be in a great movie. And you're all just going to have to accept it. You can hate on me all you want. I could even agree with you that I don't belong here. If I end up in that role, can you really begrudge me for taking it? Wouldn't you do the same thing? Wouldn't you also agree to go be Will's co-star? Wouldn't you also agree to go opposite Tyson? Not to mention if Tyson has now taken his entire supply away. Tyson's a very likable guy. He comes across as this really regular dude. I would really like to meet him. I mean, he talked about money and why he fights. He did a post-fight press conference that was epic. I don't think a person in sports has ever served themselves as a human as well as Tyson Fury served himself in his post-fight press conference. It was amazing. Talked about money, says he doesn't care. Talked about that was never what it's about. It wasn't about titles. It wasn't about legacy. Talked about this is what he does, and these are for his people, and it just came across as very authentic. The room of reporters gave him an ovation when he was done with the answer. I have never seen that. That is not a reporter's job. A reporter's job is not, it's just simply not to do that. They were overcome. And if I would have been a reporter and I would have been in the room, I would have had the same reaction. It was just this wonderful moment. What I'm sharing with you, with whatever Tyson does next, is going to be massive. And if he chooses to do that with Francis, great. And if Francis wants to go out there and try to win and even manipulate the rules and get these gloves and work hard and see a dream, we understand that, don't we? We understand that. I still come back to, and I'm very interested in the business side of it. Who's going to host this? Eddie Hearn came out yesterday and said, I don't even think it's going to happen. Don't even talk to me about it. Don King does not have distribution. Oscar De La Hoya, those guys are out of the business, even though they say they're not. The Money Team has never existed, even though you guys think that it does. Bob Arum came out and said how great it's going to be, which nobody getting ready to bid on anything would ever say. Now they're all ready against themselves. So who's going to buy it? You got Dana White, you got Scott Coker, you got Chaudhary in the world of MMA. They're out. Who do you got left? Is Vince going to do it? Maybe. Quite possibly. I mean, as silly as they're getting, they're going to make up a sport, make up their own rules. Sure, Vince could do it. You could also have a network do it. Fox has been very aggressive in that space. ESPN has been very aggressive in that space. Showtime would absolutely grab that and figure something out. For sure. You could just have a network. You don't necessarily have to have a boxing promoter. And don't forget, the Ali Act is not going to apply to this. This is not going to go to open market. That's because of these guys. If these guys sanctioned it and made it boxing, which Francis is willing to do, it would go to the open market. That's not the case. They're not doing boxing. They're doing something else. They're calling it a hybrid. I'm a pretty smart guy. I have the foggiest idea what hybrid means. I just simply don't know. I've seen cars that label themselves a hybrid. It's supposed to be like between gas and electric. I don't even know what the hell it means. They're making something up, but I can't deny that Tyson Fury is a huge star, the same way you guys couldn't deny that if I was in a movie with Will Smith, it's going to do great. Period. So it's an interesting spot. It really is. And I think it's hard for some of us MMA fans to relate to. And generally, the competitor in me is the one that would be speaking, going, look, there's not a competition here. This is not a maybe. You have the best ever of any era. Tyson Fury sits on top. Any era. Blasphemy. Muhammad Ali, yes. George Foreman. Frazier, yes. Jack Johnson, yes. Mike Tyson, yeah. Klitschko's, it's Fury. For many different reasons, but just size alone, he's a massive man. He's a massive athlete. You're not going to find men that weigh 300 pounds that can get down to the 265 limit in any sport. I'm not on the gridiron, not on the basketball court, not anywhere that they can go push hard for 36 minutes. Period. Stop you right there. You will not find a 300-pound man that can go play basketball hard for 36 minutes. He's just a rare athlete. He's that good, and he is that kind of attraction, and there is no way to deny it. And if he wants to get silly with the rules, maybe I'm overthinking this. When I do look at that face-off and I do look at what they did, was it a botch spot like Sean said? It felt like it. It felt like we should be expecting more, including, I'm quoting Sean here, including if they're faking it. But could have they pulled that off? It's one of those moments. Has Francis ever been, even within his own sport, the guy that goes to a press conference and creates one of these moments? Creates some level of excitement. He's big. He's mysterious. He's frightening. That is the story on Francis. That's it. You find someone else that matches that criteria, replace Francis. I don't know him. I don't know anybody bigger, more mysterious, or more frightening. I got an ego too. I'm a man. I don't want to call somebody else scary. That man is scary. I don't think I've said that about anybody in my entire life. Have I thought it, let alone would I ever admit it? That's a lot. He offers a lot to the equation. And then you got Tyson Fury that just fought a guy on a card that absolutely sucked against an opponent that barely got over the rope in the back. I'm not teasing the guy. They put it on TV. Man, this guy barely could get over this jump rope. They did 94,000 tickets. Why would I possibly think Tyson versus Francis wouldn't work? I would encourage them to just keep it boxing. I would encourage them that since it's Francis's first time out, learn from Jake Paul, make it 8 rounds. None of us want to see you go 12 rounds. Not to mention, it's very unlikely that any human being could walk. I mean, they don't even let boxers do that on day one. Right? Boxers have never done it before. They go 3 rounds. Once you get licensed and become a pro, you could go 4 rounds. You could start to work your way up to 12. In all fairness, that is very silly. They could manipulate the time. They could make it 2-minute rounds. 8 3s, 8 2s, do something to make it more realistic. I just don't think they need to change the rules. I don't think they need to change the gloves, but at the same time, that's not the hill that I want to die on. There appears to be something here. But the level of confidence that Francis is going about, I mean, he's got to be sure. Because I will stand by the claim, if Jon Jones today steps forward, says, Tyson, I hear what you're doing, consider me. You are going to have a media storm and you are going to hear from the fans like you never have before. Now, I don't know who's going to win that. Maybe you guys back Francis, but maybe you don't. Maybe you back Jon. And all of a sudden, Tyson, for the first time in this entire equation, has an option. And you may not like which order he chooses.